Hello and welcome to my podcast. I am Klaudia Borowiec and I'm here to take you on an exciting journey through various corners of broadly understood art. Let me introduce you to Irola Andoni, an architect and urban planner with an experience in project management, enthusiast about the city scale, firm believer of child-friendly agendas and housing for all, Curator of the Albanian Pavilion and our home at La Biennale di Venezia 2021. We will try to find the answer to the Biennale's main title, How Will We Live Together? We will speak about what the Biennale di Venezia is, how Irola is involved in the exhibit, what was the concept behind the Albanian Pavilion, what are the differences between architectural design and exhibition design? How many people have worked on this project? Transportation logistics? What happens to the materials after the Biennale? And even more. Hello, Irola.
Hello, Klaudia.
It's really nice to see you this time because the first podcast we recorded in Polish and this time we will do it in English.
Yeah, really nice seeing you.
My first question will be about La Biennale di Venezia. Could you explain what is that?
Yeah, sure. So La Biennale di Venezia is actually a foundation, which is a really important one. It's located in Venice and has been working in the fields of art, architecture, and exhibition for so long. They have also expanded into cinema, dance, and they're actually really one of the most important foundations about art and culture. And the architecture exhibition is part of it. The edition which I took part was the 17th International Architecture Exhibition, which means the architecture one has been going on now for more than 30 years.
Wow. Is it because it's every 2 years?
Yes.
The architectural part, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's every 2 years, which gives a little bit space for preparing the exhibition. Mm-hmm. But also is a nice change because the art and architecture are kind of taking the places of each other. So they interchange. So every year you can find in Venice a different exhibition, which would be art or architecture, and runs from May till November. So it's like a 6 months open exhibition for visitors. Mm-hmm.
But this year was probably way different.
Yes.
Well, this year, 2020, we're talking about.
Yeah, it was the pandemic year, so it was difficult. The question was posed in 2019 by the main curator of the exhibition, which is Hashim Sarkis. And after 6 months or a bit less, then the pandemic kind of went globally. Mm-hmm. So the decision was taken to postpone it for a year, which gave us a little bit of breath as well, say in the preparing the exhibition. The exhibition was postponed with 1 year, and it just ended basically now in the end of November. And we're talking here about a very big scale, actually. I think in this edition, it's more than 100 participants in more 46 countries. On top of that, there's also 16 national pavilions. So I think in a total, the art and the exhibitions that you see there is 200 projects.
Wow.
So you really need a few days to grasp it. And it's also located not just in one space, but there are two main exhibition spaces, mm-hmm. which is the Giardini and Arsenale. But there's also different countries which have rented out spaces throughout the city. So yeah, if somebody has the chance to visit it for a few days or a weekend, it's probably the best, mm-hmm. settings to actually.
But probably the best is just to be one of exhibitors and.
Yeah, and then you have to spend a lot of time.
Yeah. But then you have really a full picture of it. But how and why did you get involved in the Biennale exhibition?
For every country, it's a little bit different. And for Albania, the way the country picks the team of like the representative designers is through an international competition. So it's open to everybody. The theme is, as I explained a little bit before, it's set by the Biennale itself, and they have the curator. So this year's theme of how we will live together was posed in the competition, like in Albania, and an open call was running, I think, for 45 days. So it was not a lot of time to actually prepare. But then the competition also has phases, so it helps you a little bit evolve as well on your ideas. And I decided with 3 colleagues of mine who were all architects to be part of this competition, and we ended up winning it. So that's how we got involved.
Did you have to think about finances at the beginning, since the beginning of creating a concept?
Yes. So part of like your design is also you have to have an estimate, roughly estimate of the cost of your exhibition. The budget is set since like the beginning, so you know more or less how much money the country is willing to spend on this exhibition. And your role as a designer is just to fit your idea, let's say, in this budget. They also encourage teams to ask for different sponsors, or like to have this parallel, let's say, campaign after they win, of course, to try and raise some more money if it's possible. It's a little bit difficult, I have to say. Like, not a lot of people are interested in architecture in a sense, like exhibition part. So for us, it was really tough to actually approach businesses or like different organizations and kind of like ask for money. But we were lucky, like we got also like let's say a little bit of support from the municipality of Tirana, and that gave us a little bit more, space and a little bit more free to do some more stuff.
But that's very interesting what you just said, that people are not really interested into architecture. I mean, of course they are interested where are they living at the moment,
yes,
but
exactly.
They're not interested into exhibitions and that topic.
Yeah, I think the funny part is like architects are seen as maybe designers, so we are seen as people who are like innovative or creative, but / engineering. So people expect us to build stuff that they will live, or I'm saying like common sense of people like around us. So it's less about us being thinkers and trying to solve actually like special problems or policies, politics and stuff. So I think the Aristotle times and like all the Leonardo da Vinci were like, where you had to be like the artist, the engineer, the architect. You had to be all of those things in order to build stuff. Now, the profession has also, kind of like
but it's also really difficult to think about it this way because we are so specialized nowadays, and that is very, very wide topic. But Irola, tell me, how will we live together?
This is actually the topic.
That's the topic.
Which has a lot of answers, and that's a good thing. I think the best part of this edition was that the theme was actually a question, which made you try to answer it actually. So it's not just a topic in itself that you can actually think a lot. Of course you can think, but in a sense, like being a question helps you direct your thoughts. And the way the main curator presented the theme was actually dividing the question, which was really interesting. He divided it by taking all the words by each. So, for example, how, it means not only on the means, but it's a little bit more broad than actually how we do things. Will, it goes for the future. So it's not like we have to discuss how are we living now, but also like try to answer it in the future. By we, it's not about all us as a community or as people, but also other species. So we don't live in this planet alone. So it's like a more broad thing. Also live in the sense that we just don't, it's not about only existing, but it's also about thriving, right? It's about cohabitating. And together, of course, it means a lot of stuff as well. Together it means me and you, but together means us as a population, but means us with other species as well. So it's the question itself, like when you divide it and try to understand how many layers are there, it's really important. And yeah, that was an interesting topic to actually be part of.
Mm-hmm. And what was the concept behind the Albanian Pavilion?
So we tried to answer.
That's a very difficult question.
Yeah, exactly. Like being or having so many answers to the same question, it made us realize that actually, if we want to represent Albania, and it would be nice to actually present something that comes from us as a culture, and try to compare it with what's happening outside our community. So we tried to answer this question of how we live together by trying to talk about communities and neighborhoods and neighbors. And for us, it was really important to actually do a retrospect and see how people used to live together and how they are trying now to live together. The thing is, everybody tries to aspire of like what's the West and what's like living, I don't know, in the European more developed countries or also in the States, and trying to see those models and stick to those. But also it clashes sometimes with our own culture and how people used to live. So it's really interesting to actually see some of these differences and what changes for the better and what doesn't actually change for the better. And we posed this question by trying to answer of why we don't live in these secure communities anymore, why we don't live in these open houses. Because we're trying to see...
What are the open houses? You mean in Albanian culture, right?
Yes. So we tried to make an analysis and... like 20 years ago, which is basically our own childhoods. Like we are all around our 30s as a team, so me and my 3 colleagues. And like trying to answer this question by like personal aspect was also like, how did we grow up actually? Like how was our own experience of like living together and actually being brought up in these communities? And Albania back there, so in the 90s, were like just coming out of communism, which was really harsh and very dark period of the country. We're like trying to now seek different ways of living and economic opportunities, policies, politics, everything like changed. But people still kind of like hang into each other, and they had like this more close relationship. In Albanian tradition also, like being part of like having this open home, it's about expecting guests all the time. And like it's a very big part of the culture to have people in. And also like a Mediterranean country, so that means a lot of like socializing outside, inside the house. So it's more like a connected kind of like community and the thing, which now I have... like for the worst, it's kind of like changed. People are more going toward all this globalization, technology, everything changed. And so we're trying to see it actually also as an architecture point of view. So like trying to explain or trying to seek an answer of how architecture can have an input. Because the future of all living us together, it's actually this collective consciousness, right? We just attempt to live together, and then we create this identity, and together with the people that will live next to each other, we just have our neighborhoods, and then that neighborhoods became like a city. So it's like a different scales that we all have to be involved as much as we can in order to change things for the better. And it's also very important to get to know each other. Otherwise, people are met with disbelief, and you cannot change a lot of things if the trust is missing. So this was our main idea of talking about transparent and how Albania changed through these years, and how communities changed, how our neighborhoods changed, and our personal and social relationships changed as well.
Mm-hmm. And how did you express that? How did the process of creating the exhibition go?
So this idea had to be turned into a pavilion, of course, and had to be part of an exhibition. And if you talk about social bonds, and if you talk about how we actually create and build communities and how we foster these relationships, it's really hard to actually build them as a pavilion. But the thing we urged people to think about is like, what happens if you cross the walls of your own apartment and try to get to know the people that are next to you, and then together maybe you can change your life for better, like feeling more secure, but also seeking changes. And our pavilion is basically this invitation of like you crossing the walls, and maybe you can try to find a connection that will, make your life, your everyday life a little bit more better, a little bit more secure. So you feel like you actually belong to a space, and you belong to the city itself, and so on. So the pavilion we built is made of the interiors of apartments. So we had 3 apartments, which were they standing next to each other. And the walls of these apartments became the outside of the pavilion. So these 3 apartments were connected with a mystical room, like this, the part where the main exhibition was taking part. And our idea was visitors coming from different apartments, which would be neighbors in real life, and like come together in this space, in this room. And the idea was like that room can actually change its function, but can also change what it means depending on what people are seeking. So somebody might be seeking, I don't know, open space or like common greenery. I don't know, that can be like a very personal space as well. But we wanted to also talk a little bit more abstract. So it's not about physical space, but it's also about social space. Your neighbor might just turn into your best friend. You never know, like starting a relationship that can also change. So by crossing these walls, people would come in this room, which would be like the core of the exhibition. And we did put there movies. And also, we wanted to try for the visitors, which would be the neighbors, to be part of this neighborhood experience, and they would see themselves as part of. And we also put like a big mirror in one of the faces of the room, and the other walls were like filled with films of neighbors interacting with each other. So you would like reflect yourself in those movies, and that is probably like, that's the space where you start reflecting about the questions that we pose about how actually, what will happen if you cross the walls of apartment and be more open to knowing each other and start a relationship that might actually help you
turn into something strong. But how did you get all these movies and pictures, or all these settings? Because I can imagine these are the Albanian societies filmed. And how did you get them? Did you ask personally people, or for their like archive videos, or how did you do that?
Actually, it was more like a complex process. We wanted to show, like make the exhibition a show about personal experiences as well. So to make it a little bit more personal. So we asked people on social media to send us stories that they have with their neighbors growing up, or maybe today. Like a lot of people responded by sending pictures and also short stories about what they shared with their neighbors. Sometimes there was just a morning coffee. Sometimes it would be like a whole summer when people using each other's gardens, or like lending things from one house to the other. So it was really touching actually to see how people also felt nostalgic about the the things that they used to do together, and now everybody just rushes in their everyday life, and you don't even have the time anymore to stop and think about your social aspect. It's just the timing and the way that our life has developed is just more fast now.
It's crazy. Like it's during maybe 20, 30 years, all these things happened that we changed our lifestyle. And on one side, it's very beautiful to have all these possibilities of virtual life and traveling and getting all this knowledge. But at the same time, we are losing something local.
Yeah, so it's really important to have a balance, I believe. And except from the personal stories, we also researched the Albanian movies and tried to actually expose something there that was authentical. And we did a review of all the Albanian movies that were done, like during communism, which was this really rich archive of movies. And we just zoomed in those moments where actually they were showing like the Albanian life of living things, or like how people used to live and what they used to share with each other. So we picked small scenes, like very short scenes, would be like 1 minute, 1 minute and a half, and kind of like put them together in a bundle and like try to show these experiences. So it's not only about the stories, but it's also like just looking at actions. We had been very clear as well that the movies itself are like, because they were filmed in the communism, they of course are filled with this propaganda and like depicting the perfect social life, which of course was not the case in many cities. But still, they had something authentic in like expressing how people actually lived their everyday life. And we had to stress that very like enough, because there was also a lot of people felt like maybe that was not, the good comparison of like picking these movies and trying to explain what real life was, because movies is movies and real life it's another thing. But for the purpose of the conversation and like keeping it up, we wanted to have it as much a short impression and also as much vivid as it could be. And for a foreigner visitors who like really knows a few things about Albania or maybe nothing, he would be probably just get the essence or like have this spark. And maybe if the theme, is interested about the theme, that he will research it more. And we have the website, and we have also like the book, the publication, which goes really wide about explaining all those things.
Website. You created your own website and all these materials, so maybe we can link them so people can go and access. Yeah. So, sorry, I interrupted you. You mentioned about
nothing.
this.
I just wanted to say that, basically the idea of our pavilion was people being in this room and asking the question and becoming a moment of reflection that what has become of us and our homes, basically.
Because you had the concept and you had to design the pavilion, and you said that you had to go through that process to materialize it. But from your architectural perspective, what's the difference in between typical architectural design and designing an exhibition? Is it way different thing, or you can relate some things to normal architectural process?
Yes and no. I have to say, like, there is a lot of different, like the approach of building an exhibition is so much different of like building a building or trying to research an open space. But there
probably
are also
it's faster.
But I think there's this overlap of like thinking process, how it goes. So always when you design also like something that's going to be built, you start by asking questions to yourself. It's like, am I doing this and that? And then you have these regulations that you need to like, fit your own thoughts into this box, let's say. Mm-hmm. And the exhibition is kind of like a similar thing. You have a space which you need to fill. The theme is already there. And the construction process is a very short part of it. as your own thoughts, but it takes a lot of time to actually build the thing. So it has, I think, a lot of like similarities, but on the other hand, architecture exhibitions are becoming, I believe, now more popular, and architects are invited as part of the conversation more and more, like joining artists into trying to, to say their own take, rather than just being part of this engineer community, which is only the profession was seen more like, you know, mathematics, engineering, materials, and that's it. It's all about, sustainability design now, and we cannot just build as we used to build because, we are ruining our planet, basically.
How many people were involved in that project? Because it's not only your team with your Albanian friends, architects, but there were probably way more people and teams kind of cooperating together.
Yeah. So we had a small team, but a very effective one, I have to say. We had.
Why so small? How many people were you?
Well, it was 4 of us. Like, we worked full time on this for a very long time, for a year and a half, basically. Like, doing all of the designs, and also like trying to build the social media network. We researched the movies and did like a lot of also writing and research about the theme.
And the construction. Is that a small team?
I mean, it's 4 people.
Yes, but were there like bigger teams? Let's say, I don't know, Norwegian team. How many people they had?
Well, the thing is, like, it depends how many people you can actually employ to do these things for you. So it might be just one as a curator, but then you have a research team, you have a designing team, and you have like a lot of these other teams which you can afford to pay.
Yes,
and
that's an important part.
Our budget was really limited, so we did do a lot of stuff ourselves. We didn't even do the website ourselves. We had to turn into the so we had basically to think about a lot, and we had to do full-time jobs as well in different countries. So it was really hard to coordinate, and
because all of you worked and studied in different places at that time, wasn't it like that?
Yeah, the thing is, because of this postponement of the Biennale and because of the pandemic, we all had different plans. So I moved to London next couple of months, next year. So by the time we had to prepare the exhibition, I was living in London. The other team member, Rudina, just moved to New York for her for her studies, like an additional studies she was doing, and then. Yeah, the other team member now is in Tokyo, and the other one is now in Tirana. So we had like this different kind of energy coming from different countries. But we had to basically do a lot of stuff online and coordinating. But except from us, we also reached out to a lot of people in the sense that we had other professionals also expressing their own thoughts about this. We didn't want this to be only us as architect responding it, but also have a take of how social, somebody from the social studies would have it as background. We asked journalists to have their own take about how they see things. So we have this bundle of essays as well of these different people who wrote their own short text about responding to how we see the theme, but from their own perspective, which is really nice. And I think it has enriched our project a lot. And then there is the construction team, right? Who constructs actually the pavilion.
But that was in Italy.
Yes.
That was Italian team.
Yes. And because it's the exhibition, it takes place in Venice, it's so much easier to work with local teams because they also know about all these technical things that needs to be set up. We had very good luck and very good communication with our team there, which helped us a lot figure out detailed stuff. And we had to travel back and forth to Italy for the 3 months before the exhibition just to follow up all the work. and it was a great experience, I have to admit.
For sure. But how long did it take to build up all the exhibition?
I think the Biennale itself opens like 4 months or 3 months before the exhibition. So every country and like those 200 exhibitions that I mentioned at the beginning, they're all are built at the same time. So these two spaces that have that house the main exhibitions are basically construction sites for like 3 months, and everybody tries to push this, as much as they can. Mm-hmm. There is a queue for everything, so
but
for transportation.
I can imagine it's so crowded, but I can also imagine that the transportation in the city is very complicated. How did you manage that?
Yeah, sitting in the lagoon is not very fun, and everything has to be with small boats that they move around, and that's why you need like a really good construction team which really knows the settings in Italy in order to go things smoothly. Because of the pandemic, also there was limited people working on these construction sites, and they're also not allowed of like mingling or like changing. So you had your specific place where you worked, and you're not allowed to like visit others, which was something that architects used to do before, like in previous editions. This was possible, but in this one it was more restrict because of the COVID. But I have to say it helped us really have like a close contact with the pavilions we had next to each other. Like we had the Philippine pavilion next to Albanian, and we spent so much time with the curators of the Philippines pavilion, and it just turned out into a friendship, which is like beautiful, because we could hang out only together, and then we did, and just keep exchanging ideas and how their pavilion developed ours. So yeah, it has pros and cons.
Mm-hmm. So maybe that also reflects to your main idea, living together, going out of your little apartment and just getting to know your neighbors. But Irola, I want to know more about the logistics, because you mentioned about this construction site in the city, in Venezia. And but how did it go? Did you have to import something from Albania to Italy, or you just build up everything from scratch? Or how does it work for you, or how does it work normally for other countries?
It depends a lot on the idea. I think that all teams have, like each team has, but also financially, it makes a very big change. There were pavilions, like for example the Japan pavilion, which dismantled a house in Japan and they brought it to Venice, like all the elements. And then they tried to they did an exhibition of those elements and showcased all of this. So I think that process was really time consuming, but also financially very costly. It's like dismantling a house and actually cataloging every element and then shipping them. There were a lot of delays. China Pavilion didn't open on time. They opened after 3 times because of the pandemic and problems with transportation. Because of our small budget, we set from the beginning the idea that we'll try to build there as much as possible and just bring from Albania only the authentic elements which we wanted. The beginning, we had even the idea of bringing there at that room like a traditional carpet, so something that really resembles the culture. Then that also turned out to be not feasible in the sense of the pandemic and not clean enough in the sense that catch the viruses, and all the materials that needed to be used had to be changed basically because of the pandemic. So you're not allowed to have screens anymore which people could touch, or having curtains which people could go through. Our main concept of this crossing these walls, and we wanted to make that as penetrable, so people would actually cross from one space to another. And initially we thought to build the pavilion very light, as a light material, so you could go through them. And we had to change that, of course, because was not allowed to touch anything because of the because of COVID. So then we turned into doing just walls, just regular walls, and we had to put like openings so that people wouldn't touch anything. So we had to change a lot, and we had to be creative as well of like how to change, how to make the space safer, but also not compromise the idea which is behind. So yeah, transportation, all the things come very differently from each country. For us, it just turned out to be, we just built a pavilion over there, and we just brought movies, postcards, and everything from Albania, which are like soft materials, and it was really easy.
You could kind of manage to pack it in one luggage or two luggage suitcases. Nowadays, exhibitions can be a little bit different, and you don't need to do everything physically. It can be more virtual. There was one exhibition, I think, wasn't it?
The German pavilion.
Yeah, German pavilion, that they made something totally virtual, wasn't it? Could you maybe clarify that?
Yeah, so I think the German take on this exhibition was doing everything virtual. They were skeptical, I think, from the beginning that if people cannot travel, because it was not about only the pandemic, but also a lot of like countries banned each other from traveling. And a lot of people just didn't have the chance to travel. And as I said, like we were living in different countries. So for each of us had like different, quarantine time as well. So me coming from UK, I didn't have to quarantine, but my friends from Albania had to quarantine for 5 days and then start working. So there was like this whole logistics around it that was different for every team member. And they set up from the beginning that they will do it only virtual, so everybody can have the chance to actually see their exhibition. So if you went to the German Pavilion, which is like this building that stands in Giardini, which is like really nice and bright walls, you just enter and you have only QR codes. So basically you just need your phone again and you just do the round of the exhibition, which you can do it also from home. So yeah.
That's also an interesting concept.
There were pavilions which got like special mention or like prizes, so you can actually see how some of these themes actually overlapped or were like very well designed or exposed. It's very interesting to see like the different takes that architects or designer team had on this exhibition. The pavilion which won the Gold Lion for this edition was the United Emirates Arabs. And yeah, they actually produced a new material, which is like very exciting. They were showcasing this material in the exhibition, which is more sustainable and also reflects the problems that they have of the desert and like the limited water, the fresh water that they have, and the process of turning the seawater, so like the salty water, into drinkable water. It just produces a lot of salt left behind. And the idea was like how this salt can be then reintegrated into another material, which just strengthens with time. So with like getting CO2. And yeah, so they showcased all the research about that material, which was like really interesting. So yeah, we don't need to figure out how things, how we will live together. Like what we have now, we can actually think about new ways of approaching this. There were also pavilions like ours, which turned into more this community and more about this, like the social bonds of how we live together. The Nordic pavilion was a resemblance of our idea as well. They presented a co-housing project, which meant of how people were going to live together and like creating their own spaces. So what for these families living in a co-housing meant and what the space that they shared was. There was also projects, for example, the Philippine Pavilion, which was our neighbor. They also turned into this mutual work. So people helping each other building houses or building like social infrastructures. Yeah, and they asked like a community back in Philippines of what they wanted as a community to build. And after workshops, they all decided that they wanted like a library and where kids could actually go and study, but also women could gather and do their own things. and also men like use it on different space, but also, you know, as a community, so like women or men coming together to like decide about important stuff or like hold their meetings. And yeah, they did do the library itself there. They dismantled it, shipped it to Italy, and they rebuilt it there. So it was also like a space which communities came together. And very digital stuff, also like very like avatar projects that were like more digitally and more different. I don't know. There's like a lot of ideas, and it's amazing to see how all of this can come together actually.
And also probably because of the pandemic, everything had to be more restructured. Because of the restrictions, so a lot of projects have changed, and probably that was also very interesting to see, like the change in the concept too, but trying to keep this main core of the ideas. And what really happened after Biennale? Like, what happened to all these exhibitions? Like, is there any, I don't know, people can take over materials? Do you take it back to your own countries? What's happening?
There is different also approaches of how the life of these pavilions goes beyond that. In our case, our pavilion just got dismantled, and we have now only the website as a thing that, you know, keeps there and has the videos and has the whole experience, which will be, I guess, like online for for a long time. And there's also other pavilions which might be reused for different spaces. I believe like the Japanese pavilion. The Japanese pavilion will travel to Norwegia, I think.
Okay.
For another exhibition there to be reproduced, like all these materials to be reproduced in something else.
Wow.
So that depends also on the takes of the creators and the possibilities they have to showcase their work somewhere else. But I think for the majority, they just get dismantled, and yeah, they just become, in a bad sense, kind of like not the ecological way. They just become trash, and that's a sad part. But also, I think more people are trying to address it as a problem, and everybody tries to use a lot of recyclable materials, but also like trying to figure out what these materials can be used. I have to also mention here, because this year, because it was so special and we had like so much time to actually get to know each other, all the curators of the national pavilions, we came together in this curators collective that it's called. So basically, we're the online meetings of all the creators and trying to push the idea of like Biennale just not being in Venice and just being there, but can also be like this platform for us as creators to discuss more and also get to know each other's work and try to figure out what this collective can be in the future and how can be helpful for the next generations that would come to exhibit their spaces. And during the time that the pavilions were built, a lot of teams there were like writing about materials that they didn't use, but that for somebody else might be needed. So it was a nice also exchange experience. So those materials were used from different teams, and then some leftovers were turned into a competition. So they became benches, which they were exposed in different pavilions. So these ideas were like the circulating economy and how materials can be reused was part of this conversation as well, which is really important that we need to address it.
What was your favorite exhibition? Of course, besides your own. But what was the most exciting for you exhibition to see and experience?
I think because you are there and you are like for this long period of time, you also get to know the teams that work on the projects, and the way somebody explains their own work, it's so much more exciting than just, passing by on a pavilion for like 5 minutes or even less. Because if you have to like visit 200, then you probably at some of them you'll just rush through.
Exactly.
So you never,
especially
have
when
time.
You have 1 or 2 days.
Yeah, exactly. But I think from a personal take, for everybody, it's like different. For some people, some themes are more personal and they're more maybe connected to their field of research or field of interest. So they become more important for you, but that doesn't mean that, they're not important for somebody else. So I actually really liked an installation that had like the map of Venice. Built with this material, which if you step on it, it will just start ruining itself. So it's like it dissolves. And the curators of that specific installation, they had the idea of speaking about the tourism and the sustainability of tourism, and showcasing the case of Venice, that how the million of visitors that visit Venice every day can actually ruin the ecosystem. And also those big ships, right, that they come to Venice and they scale, and they just come, they rush into into the city for a couple of hours and they just leave. So I don't know if this is the question is this a sustainable way of developing tourism? Should we be aware that we're actually destroying part of our history? So I think that it's a good documentation to see what happens to that floor at the end. So after every visitor that has passed through for 6 months, then you can see how that starts to crumble. So you can see the map of Venice actually being, destroyed. So that's a nice parallelism just to showing how things change, and it may be invisible because you just walk through, but then if you photograph like the starting, the middle and the ending point, you can actually see how things change for the worse sometimes. So it makes you think as well about the sustainable way of living, visiting, tourism, which is also an important part of this well-connected world.
Yeah, yes. It's very good to say well-connected world. And what is the outcome, summary of that exhibition, La Biennale di Venezia?
I think because it's such an intense space of thoughts and art and exhibition, it's really hard to make a summary, and everybody is led on their own experience and kind of take from the exhibition what touches them the most or what impresses them. And for me, the question of how we live together is not about, it's a social question, but it's also a political one. Mm-hmm. It's also a spatial one, we're talking about space. So it's not a very specific one, a specific topic, which gives you a lot of ideas. And having the possibility to actually have a lot of takes from different teams, from different cultures is really important. And for the Biennale itself, it's also, as I said at the beginning, it's a foundation. So they just dismantle this exhibition and prepare for the next one. Yes. So it's also like a tempo thing, which they need to catch up with the upcoming questions, upcoming topics. But it's a very important scene for conversation and a platform for opening conversations and trying to discuss and change things.
So there is no actually clear statement in the end. It's just open for everyone.
There is not a clear answer of how we will live together, and there is not a recipe which we can follow.
No, especially that I was reading an article that actually this question, how will we live together, is popping up in every single society, in every single decade, century. It's nothing new. And we still try to figure it out, how will we live together in the future? And that's really nothing new.
I think it's a lot changes, in the time being of how people live together, but we're also seeking for the future and asking question if the settings we have right now, is it the best, or can we change things for the better? Or are we actually destroying a lot of stuff that has been good in the past, but kind of take it for granted, or I don't know, exploiting them more than it's actually possible. So yeah, I think it's a really important question, and it's a historical one. People have been asking this question for a long time, and I believe they will ask it in the future as well. And every generation has kind of like to figure their own answers to this and try to have their own take.
Mm-hmm. Adjusting to current situations and circumstances. Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much, Irola. It was a very inspiring conversation. I found out so many great things about behind the scenes of La Biennale. And thank you for explaining your concepts and process and how everything looked like from your perspective.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure sharing all my thoughts and ideas with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to my podcast. If you're a Polish speaker, Irola and I recorded another episode in Polish, which is now available on my Spotify and YouTube channels. Thank you. Bye-bye.